Once upon a time, there was an ordinary girl, or so she thought, that lived on the edge of a very dark and mystical forest. And in her village she was told to never venture into the dark woods, for there were great dangers there, and that she would become lost, and that the monsters that laid in hiding would not only consume her, but would take it out on the village too. They said, stay here at the edge of the meadow where it is warm, where it is safe. But this ordinary woman, or so she thought, was curious. Could it really be as dangerous as they said, she thought? How could they really know? For she had never met anyone who had ventured into the dark forest past the briar wall. If you just mentioned the name of the dark forest, you were quickly reprimanded. But one day, she felt herself pulled to the edge, where the warm sunny meadow met the seemingly dark and unknown interiors of the forest. She felt pulled as if there was a calling her to come to the forest edge. And she squinted her eyes and tried to gaze in. But what she saw wasn't so scary. There was something there, something glittering. And she could see a beam of light that cut through the canopy of the forest, and it seemed to rest upon a very beautiful, radiant woman. And she was confused, and she didn't know what to do, and she felt fear and excitement. She didn't know what to do as she sat there on the edge of the meadow that was safe and warm, looking into the dark forest that she was told was scary and dangerous. But she felt pulled. And at that moment, a hummingbird began to flit about her. And then a flicker emerged from the woods and landed upon a branch just nearby. And she remembered the whisperings of old grandmother telling her of how the hummingbird represents renewed birth, and how the flicker arrives when new beginnings are near. At that moment, she heard the caw sound of the crow, and she looked up to see upon the edge of the forest a crow. And it looked straight into her eyes, and then, as if to motion for her to follow, flew into the dark forest towards that beam of light that lit upon the beautiful, radiant woman. And she looked around to see if anyone was watching. And she was full of fear and anxiety and excitement. And she decided it was time to venture into the forest on her own. So she timidly, cautiously stepped into the cool shadows, into the dark. She moved past the briar branches, and upon the forest floor she found a very soft and magical bed of moss, adorned with blue star flowers. And she very cautiously walked towards the beautiful, radiant woman who smiled at her in such a familiar way. It was as if the ordinary woman, or so she thought, knew her, as if in a distant dream. "I've been waiting for you," the radiant woman said in a soft and confident voice that resonated with a deep inner connection. And the ordinary woman, or so she thought, felt envious and in awe of this amazing woman. And she said, "Do I know you? How is it that you've been waiting for me? How is it that you look so familiar to me?" said the ordinary woman, or so she thought. And the radiant woman said, "Why, of course you know me. I am you without all your fears and all your doubts. Remember back when you were a child, you had a grand vision of who you were and who you'll become." And the radiant woman said, "The crossing into the unknown forest was just a test. And now that you have taken your first steps, you can easily take more. And with each step, you will grow and become stronger, and it will become easier and easier. And the ordinary girl, or so she thought, asked, "But how can you be me? How are you so beautiful and so strong? But I am just an ordinary girl." And the radiant woman said, "Did you notice how it felt when you took your first steps into the dark forest? How did that feel for you?" And the ordinary woman, or so she thought, said, "Well, at first I felt really scared and anxious, but also really excited. And when I stepped through and was within the cool shade of the forest, I suddenly felt strong and I felt brave, though still a little scared. And I knew something magical was waiting for me." The radiant woman said, "Yes, that strength and that bravery, that is you. And it is what you see and what you feel in me. With each step you take, it will become easier and easier, and you will become more and more brave and more strong and confident." And the radiant woman told her, "With each step that you take, you gain more gifts, gifts for yourself, gifts that you can share with others. And you've been called so you can share your gifts with the world." And the ordinary woman, or so she thought, felt a little confused. And she asked, but what gifts do I have to offer? Who am I to have anything to give?" And the radiant woman says, "Your greatest gift to the world is simply to be yourself. For Spirit has made you just perfect for what the world needs and for those who will come in contact with you. You are your own gift to the world." And suddenly the ordinary woman didn't feel so ordinary anymore, as she could feel her own magic inside of her. She looked back to the forest and into the warm, sunny meadow from where she came, and it no longer looked so warm. And she knew that she had stepped through an imaginary veil, for what had seemed to be a comfortable, warm space was really only a spell, keeping her confined from knowing who she really was and giving her gift of herself to the world. And when she looked back at the radiant woman, she smiled. And she took a couple steps and actually stepped right into her. And they became one. And in that moment, a path opened up, illuminated by a warm, soft sun. And with each step, she felt lighter, stronger, and connected. The path brought her to a village, to her village. And her gifts transformed all who were there, and they were all the better for her new radiant self. This is the story of the ordinary girl, or so she thought, in the dark forest. And may this story be a blessing for you as you continue your journey into the mind detox, stepping into the unknown interiors, and coming to rest in your own radiant self. Welcome to the Mind Detox. Hari Om Namaste.